Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. If you're not doing these things, I have to assume you keep sharing AI videos without knowing the difference. On today's episode, we will be talking about some Hall of Fame shenanigans, chaos happening in America. But first, we have to be talking about a bombshell reporting from one Shams in the NBA. But before we get into that, apologies to everyone. We're only having one podcast this week. Something happens in the wintertime that happens to some people, not everyone. People get sick. That happens to your boy. So a little congested. You might be able to hear it in my voice. But we're going to power through this pod and give you guys what you need for this week. Unfortunately, we did not have an opportunity to talk about the two AFC and NFC championship games, which I both got wrong. But we will be talking way more about the Super Bowl and Super Bowl matchup on next week's episode with the Seahawks taking on the Patriots. No, we will be talking at first about these trade rumors with Giannis Antetokounmpo. The latest reporting now is that he has finally allegedly hit that red button and says, I do not want to be with Milwaukee Bucks any longer. Okay, so I have two big viewpoints from this, right? As many of you know, if you listen to this for a while, I am a Knicks fan. The Knicks are heavily involved in these rumors, but we will be taking the larger point of view from just the Giannis aspect, the NBA aspect, where he might go aspect, and then I'll try to zero in on the Knicks aspect of it. On the first hand, I would say that this is a little bit of a cautionary tale for Giannis to do this, right? He's been with the Bucks for 13 years. He's arguably the greatest player in franchise history. Him or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, before he changed his name. He's been everything to his franchise. 50 games, two-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Finals MVP, NBA champion, NBA Cup champion. We are not going to disrespect the NBA Cup here. He has won almost everything you can possibly win with a franchise. So I don't think he owes them anything else, right? He's going to have his jersey retired there. Like I said before, might be the greatest player in franchise history. There's nothing really else he can do there outside of winning more championships that's going to elevate his team. However, I do think that there is something to the longevity of a player playing with one team. And the thing about it is, people, I don't think, really understand when we like kind of lionize the guys who played with one franchise the entire time, that there were lulls in a lot of these teams' franchises. I mean, when Dirk was on the Mavericks, there were plenty of times where, you know, they were the number one seed and they lost in round one to the Golden State Warriors. There were years where they just weren't very good. They kept losing over and over and over again. And Dirk still stuck it out with the team. They ended up winning the championship. And then even in the waning years, when they end up getting Luka Doncic and things like that, he was able to end up going the way he wanted to go. Kobe Bryant, same thing. Wanted to get traded to Chicago Bulls at one point. That didn't end up happening. He ended up staying. He rode out the lulls of the team. There were times during Kobe's prime where they were missing the playoffs. He ended up getting Paul Gasol, winning 2 more championships, and the rest is history, right? I do not necessarily think that the grass is going to be greener for Giannis if he leaves, right? The team that is going to acquire Giannis, while they're going to give up a lot of stuff to get Giannis, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the haul that, you know, people think of, like the SGA trade for Paul George or anything to that extent. And if he goes to the Western Conference, which he we'll see, it's going to be just as hard for him to now just to get to the finals, let alone win the championship. But I do think there is something to the idea of riding throughout the tough times. Now, you can argue maybe the last couple of years were the tough times, but they did make a trade. They tried to get Damian Lillard on the team. The team has tried to do things to keep Giannis happy, and those things just haven't worked. If I were Giannis, I would stay, because I do think that this team, while right now they aren't necessarily well put together, there is an idea of, okay, they can have one of their picks in this draft, if they send him home and they get somewhat lucky and they get up in the top 5 of this draft and get a VJ Edgecombe, a Cooper Flag type player where you can go like, okay, this guy, while he's not going to be the best player on the championship team, can at least be a starting caliber player for cheap. And because we have this guy on the cheap, if he can be a real impact player right away, you have Giannis. You could at least see a world where they can compete for the Eastern Conference. And I just don't necessarily think it's going to be as easy for Giannis as he thinks if he goes to another team, whether it's San Antonio, Houston, Atlanta, New York. Like, there will be challenges. There will be challenges on each and every one of those teams that he's going to go to. And I don't necessarily think that whatever team he's on is necessarily going to be considered to be the favorite. I just think there's just a very cautionary tale that you can see because while, yes, there are the Shaqs, there are the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the LeBrons, even though LeBron I don't think is necessarily in the same category as Giannis in the sense of like LeBron kind of bounced around a lot, especially in his prime. There are the Dwayne Wades. There are the Bradley Beals. There are the Damian Lillards, right? Like, there are guys, and those guys aren't as good as Giannis, or weren't as good as Giannis when they were in their primes. But there are guys who had this long longevity with one franchise, and they left, whether it was in free agency or trade. And at the time, you were like, oh, man, this is going so well. And honestly, all of their careers kind of went sideways after that. Like Wade was on the Bulls team that was really weird. And then he ended up being on the Cavs team that didn't work. And he had to go back to Miami. Bradley Beal's career honestly hasn't really panned out well at all ever since he got traded from Washington. And Damian Lillard ended up having to go back to Portland, even though he spent a short time on the Bucks. So, and even so, he talked a lot about how the fact that he was really like depressed. So if Giannis is done and he's like, I'm out, I want to be out, he has every right to be out. But I don't necessarily think that it has to be something that he needs to do, because I do think there is a path for him on this Bucks team, not currently constructed, to rise back up and be one of the contenders in the Eastern Conference. Teams that I do think that will have the best offer, and I will also say I do not think he's going to get traded. I don't not think he'll be traded next week. We'll see, but I don't think he'll be traded next week. Houston makes a lot of sense. A lot of different trade packages that can go in that direction. San Antonio is just the scariest one, even though I just don't think they're actually going to do it because they have so many picks from other people's teams. And depending on which way Milwaukee really wants to go with this, you could see them actually like being enticed by a team like San Antonio, because whatever team you're going, Giannis is going to, unless he's just going to get hurt, which that's another little bit of an issue. If you're betting against his health, this guy will be 32 years old. You're going to have to give him an extension. He's going to make a lot of money. But more likely than not, your team will be good. So having the picks from that team doesn't make any sense unless you are just getting them super, super far out. But to bring it into my team for the Knicks specifically, that's the only team so far that we have reported that Giannis wants to go to. You have heard teams like Miami is interested, Atlanta is interested, but the only team that we have currently on record as of this recording that Giannis said he wanted to go to was New York. There's also reporting that Giannis apparently bought property in Prophet Lester Garden. For everyone who doesn't know where that is, that's like a part of Brooklyn that's getting like really renovated at this point. So it makes a lot of sense for him to do something like that. I've held this theory for a while, and I didn't come up with this. A writer for The Athletic, Fred Katz, who used to cover the Knicks, came up with this, and I've kind of just felt this way the whole time. I believe one of two things is going to happen this year. I believe either the New York Knicks are going to win the championship, right? Or I believe the New York Knicks are going to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. The reason why I felt so strongly about that is because I've been watching the NBA since this player empowerment, player movement, era has taken place, right? Every single time I have seen a guy say, I want to go to that team or that city, he has gotten to that team or that city. Whether you want to say Paul George took a little detour, got to the place he wanted to go to. Kawhi Leonard took a little detour, got to the place he wanted to go. James Harden, 3 different times got to Brooklyn, then got to Philly, then got to Los Angeles. He got to every single place that he said that he wanted to go to. The only guy in recent memory who said, I want to go to a certain team and did not get to the team or city that he wanted to go to was Damian Lillard. And I feel like that was a very specific scenario in which the two teams with him in Miami or the Heat were getting kind of upset at one another and whether or not that was going to go down. It got to a very weird place, but that's the only superstar that said, I want to go to a certain place and didn't get to go there. Now, the caveat that I will say for this is all of those moves that have happened prior to this new CBA coming in, right? Where it makes things a lot harder to make moves. It really penalizes teams who have a lot of very expensive rosters. It makes you make very tough decisions. So this will be, I think, the real first test to see if this happens, right? Where a player wants to go to a team who, again, frankly, does not have the same type of offer package that a team like I just mentioned, Houston, Atlanta, San Antonio, Golden State potentially could give out because they don't have a lot of their first round picks. They will be able to get more of their first round picks if this trade happens in the summertime. However, superstars run this league, and the NBA has done a lot to try and quell that type of power dynamic, but you don't reportedly want to try and hire Rich Paul to try and get you traded out of Milwaukee. You can do that on your own, frankly. You hire a guy like Rich Paul if you're like, I'm trying to get to a certain place, and they're not letting me get to the place that I really want to get to. So I still believe those two things are on the table. We'll see. You know, the trade deadline is going to be, by the time you guys listen to this podcast, 6 days from when I'm recording this out. So this will look crazy if this man gets traded on Thursday of this week. But I still hold firm and fast that he will still be on the Bucks by the time this season comes to a close, and we'll see how it goes at that point. You know, loyalty to the Bucks. Speaking of loyalty, or at least speaking about trying to have things done right by people, the Hall of Fame, some of the results have leaked out initially. One of the guys who did not make it as well was one Eli Manning, 2-time Super Bowl winning champion. Still not in. They're really holding the line on Eli not getting in a pretty shocking result for a couple reasons. Did anyone else realize that Bill Belichick has been out of the league for 5 years or close to this amount? I guess not 5 years, right? I guess it doesn't have to be that long for non-players, but Bill Belichick not in the first ballot of a Hall of Fame. And it's been a whirlwind of reasons why he did not get in. No one's really said anything. This just seems like pure and unadulterated hate. Bill Polian came out and basically said two different things. He said that he did absolutely vote for Bill Belichick to be in the Hall of Fame, and then he said he's pretty sure he voted for him to get in the Hall of Fame. I'm 95% sure. That man's lying. I'm sorry. You're protesting too much. Okay. There's two lines of thinking with this, right? Some people are in the mindset of, we are going to punish Bill Belichick because of the crimes or the cheating scandals that may have happened prior, whether it's Spygate, Deflategate, the fact that Belichick was just an asshole, frankly, his entire career, at least in the NFL, and people hold grudges. And I don't think it's just the fact that it's the Spygate and Deflategate. I think that people, frankly, did not like Belichick for a lot of the shit that he was doing in the NBA, besides all of that. But it doesn't really make sense to me, this idea that you want to try and have this weird, we're not voting him in, because eventually he's going to get in. He's one of, if not the greatest coach in sports history, not just the NFL, in the history of professional or collegiate sports. You have to go to guys like Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, like Bill Russell, like those are the guys that he is up there competing with in terms of championships that he has won. And the idea that he is not going to get in not going to get in the first ballot seems somewhat ridiculous. But I think the bigger problem is that we have now made things so personal and tried to like litigate things that are just not reality and make it so that, well, this is exactly what it is, right? We're trying to show people things that are just lying to their eyes. Bill Belichick is unequivocally the greatest coach in NFL history, you know? And he is one of the guys that helped change the way the sport is run. And I think it's a really big problem for people to have this level of animosity towards a guy when he has been one of the best coaches to ever coach football. And now there's this like almost weird kind of push to try and have him be retroactively punished for something that happened literally almost 20 years ago. I mean, the Deflategate was like 2007, I think. And he's just a guy who I personally believe is just not needing to be held back from this, okay? And there's not really a standard to be set by this because, okay, they did it this year, but is there a guarantee that he's going to get in next year now because of this? Because if everyone's talking or not supposed to talk about this, this thing just got into a point where it just seems very, very ridiculous of how it's actually taking place. And there is something to the idea of, oh, we're going to wait, but we don't know what's going to happen in the world next year, right? You can think to yourself like, oh yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be able to get him in a year, but his ability to not get in now cheapens what the Hall of Fame actually is. It just does, because we know he's good enough to be a Hall of Famer. And the pettiness that has taken place, when people talk about women being petty, men are petty too, right? Or the people in that room, because we know most of the people in that room were dudes, right? The pettiness of how that whole thing went down is just sad. And this is not coming from a Belichick fan. It's not coming from a Patriots fan. But the fact that he is not getting in on the first ballot is a very shameful kind of plot point in all of this. And I'm going to try and steal a little bit of what Kevin Wiles said. If you guys watch First Things First, I thought he actually made a really good point about this, even though it's a little bit morbid. Is like he said, we don't know what's going to happen to the world in a year from now. And you don't want to be the person where we're denying you something to assume something's going to happen in the year when you don't know what's going to happen in the year. Bill Belichick is in his 70s, okay? And tomorrow is promised to no man. And while, like I said, his name will be and his bust will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point, but you want the man to get his flowers while he's still alive to see him. And I think him not getting this honor now when we know it's going to happen is a little bit, I think, shameful of what the whole process of what the NFL Hall of Fame should be. And lastly, for you guys for the week, we have to talk about what's just happening, I guess, just around the country at the moment. And it's the same thing I said a couple weeks ago, unfortunately, when Renee Good was taken away from this earth. It's interesting. If you, I don't remember the site that had it, but, and I don't know if anyone who wants to comment on either one of these posts or whatever lives in Minneapolis. Like, they drew a line or the directions of where the George Floyd and Renee Good killings all happened, and they basically all happened within like a 2-mile radius of each other. It's like literally in one corner, then like all you have to do is like go up and make a left and straight down, and then in the middle George Floyd was killed, and then if you go straight down more, Renee Good was killed. So I don't know if that's just like happened to be the dynamics of like the not the street, but like how Minneapolis is set up. But that's just eerie that's the pathway that it's on. And the fact that we now have, again, the second time, the government has sent agents that they control to kill a citizen does not terrify you I do not know what will. And it is amazing to see the push of people to do one of two things. A, try and tell you that what you saw didn't happen. Like, truly lie to your face and tell you that the things that you are seeing are not true because I have seen those things and I am telling you that those things are not true. Or then B, basically go ahead and give up their rights that people fought for what exactly? Y'all hate trans people that much? Like that's always been my thing. I always like curious, like in the MAGA verse is like, what exactly do you get from all these things, right? And you can just see your First Amendment right, your Second Amendment rights, where I mean, people would say we need to allow multiple gun deaths to protect the Second Amendment. Now we're just like, yep, can't bring those to protest, which is not true. And then having your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights just taken advantage of. And here's the thing that I just don't feel like people, like it fully clicks in your brain, right? Like, God willing, we will have more elections. And what's going to happen when people get elected who don't like you? That's why you have constitutional rights, because it doesn't matter who the president is, who the vice president is, who the secretary of state is, who the chief of staff is. Like, these things are supposed to protect you against everybody, right? And the fact that people are almost openly okay with just crapping those away makes things kind of tough, right? We've had a lot of sports stars and people speak out recently about these things, and I would argue it's not enough, frankly. The fact that I can name or have them on top of my head speaks to how like bad it is that we haven't had it be anymore. But at the same time, it starts with the people around you, you know? And the reason why I love sports so much, and the reason why I think sports is so great, is because it can do one of two things. It can at least be a distraction from you from what's happening in the world, which I do think there's an element to sports that could just let your mind take you away from certain things. But it can also be a sense of community and let you know that you're not alone. And let you know that you're still around and these people still matter. And, you know, you're still a part of this community in so many different ways. So there's just a lot going on at the moment. We're about to have another spark plug moment with the Super Bowl coming up in 2 weeks and Bad Bunny performing. But there is a very clear point of the government sending out mass unchecked men to kidnap and potentially murder people who get in their way, which is going to be a very big problem. All right. Thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Like, subscribe, review, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. I'll be back to talk to you guys about this sports next week. Okay. Everyone take care. Be safe on this weekend. Okay. Peace.